Today I have the honor of introducing our speaker. Jose Palafox is the founder and co-owner of Starfox Financial Services, a local wealth management firm that provides fee-based financial planning and investment management. He formed Starfox in 2006. Jose is actively involved in his church, nonprofit, and the community organizations, including Rotary Club. Jose and his wife Tracy live in the Woodlands and they have 5 grown children. When I first met Jose, he was a fellow Rotarian, and then he became a friend and a mentor, and now he is my boss. His compassion for others is what makes him somebody you would want to know and serve with. He has created a lifestyle of giving back that honors the hopes he had as a young boy and reflects his deep faith. Fun fact, 2 days from now will represent Jose's 35th year of being a United States citizen. Our country and our community are better off because he is a part of both. Please join me in welcoming Jose Palafox.
Thank you all for being here. Hopefully the food's okay. Everybody like it? Yeah, let's give a big hand to the staff. They actually made this menu just for us today. I'm going to go ahead and get started with the questions for you. What is the 4th of July and, why do we celebrate it? I mean, do we celebrate it because it's a weekend to go fishing? Or because it's barbecue, right, like we have today? Is that what we celebrate for? I would say there's more to it than that. And I think people forget. And that's why I started this about 10 years ago. I decided that, I would just celebrate 4th of July like everybody else. No special meaning, just, hey, let's go have a barbecue, let's be with family and friends, don't have to work on Monday, it's great, right? But there's more to it. And as Will said, my story actually starts in Mexico. I was born in Mexicali, Mexico, and what he didn't tell you is that I was born there in basically one-room house is where I lived in, and dirt floors, dirt all around us. My mom, I asked her the story just about a year ago. I asked her why we moved to the United States. I had asked her before, but it just never really got across the whole story. The truth is that she was sitting at the table one day watching us play in the yard because we couldn't play in the house, it was too small. And she said, every one of us 3 kids that we had at the time, plus all the neighbor kids were all in the yard. And they were all filthy from head to toe, like kids are. But what she noticed is that throughout the neighborhood, there was just no hope, right? We were out playing, but it was just desolate to some extent. The whole place was dirt. There really was no jobs per se. And she went to my dad and said, we need a better future for our kids. We need to move to the United States. So we did. We came here. We actually moved to Torrance, California, where I grew up and went to school. But the one thing about Torrance, California was it's a very nice area. If you guys ever been there, heard of Palos Verdes? It's right next door, right on the beach. It's a great town. And when I grew up there, it was kind of like the 50s, right? Had my own paper route at 12, those kinds of things. Wonderful place, but there's always a but. I actually grew up on one street that was as bad can be. The gang that was controlling the street was notoriously so bad that you could call the cops at night, but they wouldn't come. It was a bad street, and that's where I grew up. And so a lot of what I get asked sometimes is, how did I get through that? Because it was horrid. Gunshots at night, drug deals in the front yard, that kind of thing. But when I was 12, I was going to Torrance First Baptist, and I got saved. I gave my life to Christ. And why was that important? Because when that happened, one of the first verses they taught me was Psalms 23. Some of you are familiar with it. Most of us have heard it. But 23:4 goes like this: Yea, though I walk in the valley of shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff comfort me. So what that did for me was, it made me understand I didn't have to be afraid. Even though I lived in a terrible neighborhood, even though I was constantly hoping that they wouldn't beat me up or something like that, God works in mysterious ways. One of the ways that he protected me was a good friend of mine who I started elementary school with and went from first grade all the way through high school, happened to be the brother of one of the gang leaders. So because of that, it was able to protect me, because whenever they started messing with me or saying something or wanting to be in the gang or beat me up or something, Chewie would step in and say, hey, leave Jose alone. He's a good kid. No need to mess with him. And so that was my protection during that time. Moving forward, when I turned 16, my parents decided they can't live here anymore. My dad was losing his job, like many people in the 80s. He worked at a steel factory, and steel factories closed. One of the biggest steel factories in the United States is where he worked at, and it was shutting down. So he decided to build a house, what he could afford, and move back to Mexico, start a small business. And he asked me, he said, what do you want to do? I said, well, Dad, I'm 16, I'm in high school, I'm working full time, I have a car, kind of have a girlfriend, so, you know, I'm out. I need to stay here. I don't want to go back to Mexico. I don't think there's a future there. And he said, okay, you can stay. Only one problem. Who rents to a 16-year-old? Nowhere to stay, right? But I had a car, and he would come back and forth every once in a while until the factory finally closed down, so I was able to stay in the camper truck with him. But after that was done, pretty much I was on my own, on the street. Nowhere to go, except my Chevy Chevette, right? Which was full of my stuff. Now the good thing was I was working full time, so I was making money. And the place I worked at, the pizza place, next door there was a gym, so I was able to take a shower there, and made it kind of easy to stay clean and be working. But because I was making money and because there was no parents around, guess what I did about school? And I guess I dropped out. Who needs school? I'm making money, I'm living my life. When I was about 18 and realized that I wasn't going to graduate high school, a friend of mine said he wanted to go check out the Air Force and see what they're all about. And at the time, he said, can you come with me so they don't lie to me or, you know, book me into going to the Air Force without really me knowing what I'm planning? I said, sure, I'll go with you. Today is Brad. So I sat next to Brad. And the recruiter starts. Well, look, we're going to give you free food, free room and board, you can get college, we're going to train you, you're going to have a job. And I'm thinking, free room and board, somewhere to sleep. Kind of liking this idea. So he left, he didn't join, of course. I went back to the recruiter and said, how can I join? He said, well, how's your high school grades? I said, what high school? He said, no, you have to have high school graduation or you can't go. I said, well, okay. So I got on the phone, set up the GED, took the GED, passed the GED, went back to the recruiter and said, here's my GED, says you can come in. So I joined, that was 1982. 1983, I actually got into the Air Force, and while I was getting my duty as what I was going to be, the recruiter asked me, so what do you want to do, Jose? I said, that's easy. I want to be a cook. He goes, a cook? Come on. You're way too smart to be a cook. He says, you're going to be a meteorologist. I said, meteor what? You know, weatherman. I'm like, a weatherman? No, I don't want to be a weatherman. I want to be a cook. He goes, no, I won't let you do that. You're going to be a meteorologist. So that's what I became. I became a meteorologist. I was weather specialist in the U.S. Air Force from 1993 to 1990. Had a great time. 8 years served it for this country. While I was in the Air Force, July 3rd, 1986, I became a U.S. citizen. That was 35 years ago now. And the great thing about that day was it was actually broadcast across the whole United States because it was the 100-year anniversary of the gift of the Statue of Liberty to the United States. But it was a memorable moment because it was nationwide, and I was just so happy that I could become a part, not only serve the country, but actually be a citizen of the country, which is amazing when you think about it, right? Here I am serving for the country and wasn't even a citizen. Now, today, my son went in the Air Force and he just got out, but at his basic training, they do it now. When you graduate basic training, they allow you to become a U.S. citizen right after basic training, which I think is much better. When you're giving your life to the country, you should be able to become a citizen, right? So, wonderful. Anyways, when I left the Air Force, I bounced around, did a lot of things. I've run dental offices, I've sold yellow pages, I've done this, done that. Sometimes people say, hey, how did you manage to be able to be in charge of dentists? You don't even have a degree. You barely graduated high school. And I'll tell you how. And that is Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. That's my life verse. I live that. I don't believe there's anything that can stop me. So here we are today, in 2006. I started this firm with $7 million under my hand. Today we manage $162 million. I just checked this. Well, you can say a little bit of success with somebody who grew up with nothing, right? But the best success that I have is the people that are here today, my family. And the staff is unbelievable. I work with a great team that cares not only about you, our clients, but our family and friends. So. about me and why I do this, I think you can gather that I'm a patriot. I believe in America. I believe in the freedoms that we've established. And so now what I'd like to do is kind of skip a little bit and take the time to tell you a little bit about America and how it was founded. And the 10 things I think every American should know, and I think they should teach in school. So although traders, explorers, and businessmen also had a hand in the founding of America, historical revisionists cannot erase the fact that the first people who found the colonies in this land were primary religious nonconformists. 10 important things every American should know about the founding of America. Number 1. Christopher Columbus, who opened up the New World to the Old, was motivated by his Christian faith to make this difficult voyage. He persevered for over 10 years and had faith to get his funding. His first 3 islands they named were San Salvador, which means Holy Savior, Trinidad, which means Trinity, and Veracruz, which means True Cross. I think a little different of how we portray Christopher Columbus today. Number 2, in 1620, the Pilgrims drafted our nation's first self-governing document, the Mayflower Compact. In that document, the Pilgrims clearly stated that they came to the New World to glorify God and to advance the Christian faith. Number 3, so the Puritans came after the Pilgrims. They created a Bible-based commonwealth in order to practice a representative government that was molded on their church covenants. Their more than 100 governmental covenants and compacts essentially laid the foundation for America's Constitution, which was drafted in 1787 and ratified in 1789. Number 4, various settlements throughout the early colonies provided refuge for religious dissidents, all types. The most famous of these dissidents was Roger Williams, who started Rhode Island, and William Penn, who started Pennsylvania. That's right. A little side story on that. His father was actually very wealthy, and William Penn was a nonconformist looking for religious freedom, but the king owed his father some money. So the king said, well, I don't really like your son, I want him out of here, so I'll just give him some land over in North America, call it Pennsylvania. So that's the story of Pennsylvania. Pretty incredible. Number 5, the education of the settlers and founders of America was uniquely Christian and Bible-based. Our founding fathers all received a thoroughly Christian education at all levels. All America's early universities, including, get this, Harvard, William and Mary, Yale, and Princeton, were all biblically Christian-based in their origins. Rare was the American of 1776 who did not know the scriptures. Number 6, the Great Awakening was a key factor in the uniting the separate pre-Revolutionary War colonies and an increase in communication among them. As evangelists like George Whitefield roamed up and down the eastern seaboard, preaching the gospel, a religious revival occurred and drew the 13 colonies together spiritually. As clashes between Great Britain and America increased, these colonists sought peace with Mother England, but not at the price of compromising their convictions. Number 7, the colonial pulpits, especially in New England, played a pivotal role in encouraging independence from Britain. The Minutemen, which we all did learn about the Minutemen in school, the Minutemen were generally members of local churches organized by their pastor and head deacon. The pastor's sermons, especially just before Election Day, informed the people about what was happening politically and what they, as faithful Christians, should do about it. Number 8, Christianity played a very important role in bringing about American independence, including the shaping and thinking of President George Washington. I said, when I was reading this earlier today, I said George Bush. He wasn't there, although he owned it not many. So George Washington and other early American heroes such as Samuel Adams, sometimes called the lightning rod of the American Revolution, Patrick Henry, its great orator. The Declaration of Independence was based on Christian ideas and viewpoints. This is number 9. The liberties granted to citizens were understood to come directly from the God of the Bible. And number 10, the biblical understanding of the sinfulness of man was the guiding principle behind the United States Constitution. The Bible was quoted more than any other source in the political writings of America's founding era. In the First Amendment, the founders presented America with a framework for religious liberty, not a weapon to be used by secularists against public expression of Christianity. Now, when I read all this, sometimes I get the pushback, well, not all the founders were Christian. True. Matter of fact, I would say Benjamin Franklin was probably one of the least Christian of the founders. We've read that throughout history books. But here's what he said. I'll quote him. Benjamin Franklin, June 28, 1787, said, "I have lived, sir, a long time, and the longer I live, the more convincing proof I see of this truth, that God governs in the affairs of men. And if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, is it probable that an empire can rise without his aid?" Pretty straightforward, I think. One of my favorite people of all time, Abraham Lincoln, said, "Intelligence, patriotism, Christianity, and a firm reliance on him who has never yet forsaken this favored land are still competent to adjust in the best way all our present difficulty." I think that rings true even today. With having said that, let's see. Here's what I like to say. Everybody here today, we all have a story. It's not just my story. But none of our story would be possible without the courage of 56 men who proclaim to the world enough is enough. Our rights do not come from any man or man-made government. They come from the God Almighty. It's my honor and privilege to read to you today the Declaration of Independence. In Congress, July 4, 1776, the unanimous Declaration of the 13th United States of America. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.